Alright, we're talking about Dragon Quest XI, which is the greatest game with the worst music that nobody played.
Didn't you say that this game, besides I think 8, was the only one to release in America?
Yeah, well, there's Dragon Quest IX, but it's a handheld game.
Oh, 9.
And there's Dragon Quest VIII that came out on the PS2, but I didn't beat it, I couldn't beat it. I love Dragon Quest, well...
You've been waiting all year long to talk about this game.
Yeah, I had to rebeat the game. It's a very, very long game. It's like 50, 60 hours long.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been wanting to talk about it for a long time. It's one of my favorite games of this decade. I don't know if I'd say of all time, but it's definitely of this decade, because I think about games that came out this decade. I think of like GTA 5. I think Skyrim came out in 2011. I could be wrong. But I like Resident Evil 2. I didn't think that Capcom could beat Resident Evil 4, but I feel like they did, and I put that up there. But yeah, Dragon Quest XI would fall as top 5 of this decade.
Right, I think that it's hard. Like, I've been looking for an RPG game to get into, and the only other RPG games that I have played was Persona, and then anything else that may have came out during this decade I didn't really care too much for. So I was really refreshed to be able to play something like this game and to be able to enjoy it the way that I did. I think that it's really hard nowadays to find an RPG game that you can actually sit down and enjoy and have a good time with.
There's a lot of great things to say about Dragon Quest XI, but there's also a lot of bad things. A lot of bad, not just the music, because the music is awful. Like I talked bad about Persona 5's music. I talked bad about the battle theme in Persona 5, and the battle theme in this is just embarrassing.
It's definitely a lot less inspired if we were to compare it to the Persona 5.
Yeah.
The Persona 5 theme song.
And he's still using like MIDI, obviously he's still using like MIDI old stuff to make it sound like an old video game.
Another one bites the dust.
And then they had a re-release on the Switch that had more the orchestrated version of the same music.
So jealous. I want that version, but like I've already played this game like 1.5 times. So.
Yeah, I played it twice, and it's a very, very long game. It's split into 3 acts. 3 pretty long acts that almost feel like they could be their own individual game. At least one of them probably DLC. But yeah, it's well, from the get-go, spoilers. Spoilers throughout this video. If you haven't played it, you're probably not going to play it. You probably don't care about Dragon Quest XI, because nobody in America cares. Nobody in America gives a shit about Dragon Quest.
Well, if you don't think you're going to play it, at least watch this video and hopefully we'll convince you to give it a try.
Maybe.
Spoilers or not.
Look past the awful music, and I guarantee you there's a great game in there. Spoilers for Dragon Quest, and also, if you do end up playing the game, make sure that you go into your options and you switch the battle mode to classical mode.
Right, because it's in dynamic, right?
Yeah, it's in some weird mode where you can walk around, and it's so dumb and it looks awful, and it takes away from like any intensity that any battle could have.
Right.
It's awful. Yeah, make sure to switch it to battle. It's much better. What makes it different from the rest of the RPG games that I've been playing? There's not too much that's different. A large piece of it is keeping it simple, keeping it original. It's the general idea of what you'd want in an RPG game.
Right.
Everything about it is some of it is dated, like the item management, all that stuff.
I had a hard time with that one because I wasn't expecting for the items to be very like separate. I didn't really know too much about that because I haven't played role-playing games back in the day.
It's something that they've been doing for a long time. They just haven't changed it for some reason. It's kind of like the main character dying on Persona. For some reason the game's over. It's something that they've been doing, they just haven't changed it for some reason. And the item management is like that for Dragon Quest XI.
Sticking to their old ways.
Yeah, it's not convenient at all. You have to go in manually and you have to individually give everybody their items.
Right, and hope for the best that this item will be useful in the situation.
At this situation,
sometimes it's not.
This character at this turn.
Right.
You know, so you have to kind of put time in to spread everything out.
Yeah.
Which is, there are things like that in this game that aren't good at all. And there's a lot, I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of people that hate this game. And it's...
Hate, that's a pretty strong word.
Yeah, no, because I mean, it's your average RPG game. A lot of people, whenever it comes to turn-based fighting games, they like things to be faster. It's not a difficult game. It's easy, but it's hard at the same time.
Right, there are definitely some bosses in there, like fucking Jasper, who beat your ass.
Yeah, Malicious Jasper, even normal Jasper you can have issues with. The octopus is probably the first big one. I had trouble with the spider monster, the spider boss.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had a lot of trouble with that one.
But you didn't have trouble with octopus one like how I did.
I did have trouble with the octopus one, but I took a step back and I thought about my situation. I switched to the great sword, which always use the great sword because that shit's OP.
With the main character.
Yeah, I took a step back and I thought about it and I ended up beating him.
Score one for the good guys.
And that's what makes this game great. That's what makes the RPG genre so great, is the idea of being able to do that. That's what's interesting. I feel like everyone has their own experience when it comes to the bosses that you fight in Dragon Quest XI. Some people will say this boss is hard, some people say this other boss is hard, they think this boss is easier.
The reason why is because everyone just has their own way of fighting, and because the game is so flexible, you can fight the way how you feel comfortable. So that's why people have those different experiences.
And that right there is Dragon Quest XI as a whole. It's what you make of it.
It's very flexible.
Yeah, it's what you make of it. You have all of these characters and all these character trees that have different things that you can try out, and you can always respec your characters and try different new things.
Right.
And it's the same for when you're exploring the world. If you do small things, if you go and search everywhere, you're guaranteed to find treasure chests hidden everywhere throughout the map.
Right, another way of how this game is flexible is they allow you to be able to switch out equipment or different weapons during the battles. If you're trying to use the benefits of a certain piece of equipment, then you can easily just do that. And that's pretty interesting. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and the game isn't too hard to the point where you can't experiment.
Right.
And that's part of why they made it like that. They made it where it's easy but difficult at the same time, because you can make mistakes, you can try things out, and if it doesn't work, you can always switch to other things. And it's balanced very, very well. The game is its boss fights. It's 100% its boss fights. All of the other things, all of the ads, all of the ones that you fight that aren't bosses are kind of just there if you need to get stronger. Because in this game, you have the ability to sprint past everyone.
Yeah.
You don't have to fight anyone. And
I love that.
it's interesting because the Japanese version of the game didn't have sprint. You had to like slow run across the entire map. Which
Wait,
is
so were the
ridiculous.
monsters able to catch you?
I want to say they could catch you. You had to work a bit harder to try to dodge.
God.
Yeah. But on the American version, they added a sprint button, and this sprint button, you can just run past everybody if you want to run past everybody, which is great. And yeah, just like Persona or something, you have the option to fight monsters rather than like in Final Fantasy X or Final Fantasy IX or 8, you would randomly fight the monsters. You would just be running around and it would randomly do the little screen twirl and you start battling.
Right.
But in this game, you can see all the monsters, you can see where they are, you can always dodge them. If you don't feel like fighting, you don't have to fight.
Right, and it makes acquiring certain items for different pieces of equipment better, or like for different armor if you're trying to craft. So if you want to go after a certain monster, you don't have to wait for it to be a random thing. You can just go after that monster continuously.
There's a lot of quality of life choices that the developer placed into this game. A lot of quality of life things, a lot of interesting flexible skill trees that you can, every character is important in its own way. You can switch them out and like somebody's gonna work with somebody else in some way, shape or form. So if you haven't noticed already, which you probably have, the art style probably looks a little familiar. We have Dragon Ball Z playing in the background for a reason. It is made by, well, the character designer was Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball Z. My God, the animation and all of the character designs, everyone, even like just the small NPCs on the side, all of them are impressive. The animation makes the game. It definitely makes the game because the music is so bad. You know, even like some of the character designs are so laughable, like the enemies, a large majority of the enemies are very, very laughable and like—
Very goofy.
Yeah, very goofy. with this goofy ass music, and even when it's supposed to be a serious situation, the music will play. It's supposed to be a very serious situation, but like it's like,
Right.
oh my god.
You know, to be honest with you, truthfully, I just think that it's that song. That's the only song that really sucks, is like the battle.
Yeah,
like going to Gallopolis and stuff.
I like the whale theme. The whale theme is a good theme.
A flying fish.
Right.
It's very, and there was also another theme that, like a fanfare that plays, not the main one, but there's another one that plays whenever something serious is happening, but I forgot how it sounds.
Ah, look at me. Oh, teary-eyed again. Bye for now, you two. I'll be back soon enough.
But yeah, the animation throughout the entire game is spot on. Like,
It's actually a lot better than the cutscenes.
yeah, they look weird on the cutscenes for some reason. But yeah, the in-game cutscenes, whenever you're talking to people, whenever they make small face expressions, it's like small details too, very small things that I notice in terms of animation that they paid a lot of attention to. And the reason why they paid so much attention to the animation is because of, in Japan, the Japanese version of Dragon Quest XI, they didn't have voices. So how do you make up for not having voices?
Right.
You animate the shit out of everybody.
Right.
And that's what they did. Everybody, like, everyone has so much character in the way that they move.
Father, my training is complete.
I noticed that whenever you click X, they have an animation happening in between the dialogue. So in a way, you can always kind of see every animation that happens, which I thought was pretty clever. The English version has voices, and for some reason they talk very, very slow, and they have very strong English accents.
Thanks so much, you're a lifesaver. Trust me to lose my headscarf just before the big ceremony.
Very, 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 very strong.
English accents that I'm sure Philip would hate with the passion.
He would hate Veronica with a serious passion.
He would hate everybody with a passion.
Rob
Everybody
isn't bad in Sylvando. Sylvando's good.
But I guess, I think the voices, the actual voice actors, they're doing a great job. It's just the English twang that they're using is like, oh, it's like really Cockney and...
I'm Veronica, by the way. Right, let's get going, shall we? I'll look after this little one.
But yeah, everybody talks very, very slow too. It almost feels like the scene runs better whenever you just let them say their first sentence and then click X. I feel like it runs a lot better. Yeah, the reason why it's like that is because the Japanese people didn't have voices. So what you do is you have their mouths moving for basically an infinite amount of time until the sentence stops. And then when they click X, you cue up the animation.
I don't mind the voices being slow.
Yeah.
I kind of, sometimes, I'm that person, I don't know if a lot of other people are that way, but sometimes I just like to hear the actual characters say what they have to say. And then I'll kind of like skip if I get the gist, but like I like to listen to it sometimes.
Yeah.
I want them to read the story to me.
Yeah. When you queue up when the animation queues up, it moves a lot smoother whenever you're reading it and you're not hearing the voices. When you're just reading it and then you click X, everyone moves like right on time, and it's perfect for that.
Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready?
It stays fresh. The game stays fresh. Almost every time I turn on the game, it feels fresh. Not just with the animations, but with how the narrative is explained. The way the narrative is given out to the player, it almost feels like an anime TV show. Personally, I don't really like the one-off anime TV show kind of like style, where it's like You go to some place, this thing happens. It's like a filler episode almost. This thing happens, and then you move on to the next thing, and then you move on to the next thing, and it's like a new enemy. But I feel like it works very well for a video game, especially a long video game like this. Every time you go to a new place, Hutto, the Nam Phom thing place with the mural that's taking up the villagers, the octopus issue in Honolulu. Every town has its own storyline, and it really feels like an adventure, because I play Final Fantasy IX, and every time I play Final Fantasy IX, I'm thinking, wow, this is set up. It could be like an anime TV show. I could see them making a Final Fantasy IX anime TV show. Since it's like that, you always feel like you're getting somewhere. You always feel like you're going, every time you play the game.
It feels like you're advancing in the story, because you're getting closer and closer to what everything is kind of building up to. And like each of these monsters and each of these enemies and problems that you have to deal with, it pertains to the bigger issue at hand. It's the dark spawn or something like that, the dark one. And that's the reason for why these places are having these issues in the first place, like the mural and all that.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's wasting your time. Throughout the entire game, it doesn't feel like that. And that's kind of what helps its length, because usually nowadays, you know, being older, I don't want to play long ass games. I don't want to play 60-70 hour games now, because like I'm impatient. So, you know, we're more busy now that we're older. But for some reason, this game, since it always feels like you're getting somewhere every time you turn it on, it doesn't feel like a chore.
It has a lot of replay value as well. Like, it's one of those games where I feel like you, after finishing it, you still want to do more, like do the little side quests and stuff, because there's so much that I think for you to see and for you to do to experience the game.
It still feels refreshing too after you beat it, especially because of Act 3. Act 3 is the end game essentially, and the way Act 3 is set up is very, very well done for an end game scenario.
Right.
It's interesting the way that the story sets itself up in Act 1, the way it doesn't really resolve in Act 2, and you have to go through things again, and Act 3 is the end game of the entire thing. They don't just do that, they do it with reason. Majority of it is for you to have your connection with your party. It's all about the main character gathering his party and connecting with his party, and they establish that throughout its gameplay also, with how the skill trees are designed and how everyone helps each other.
Right. Everyone. It's like if you were to take out one person out of the party, I feel like you can still fight, but I think that everyone is so important and so useful that you would have a lot of trouble. Like if Sylvando wasn't in the party, I don't know what I would do if I were to just lose him. Yeah.
The map in Dragon Quest XI is brilliant. It is fantastic. Every single town feels very, very unique. You have the snow place, you have the hotel, and you have the volcano in the background. There's the sand area, Gallipolis, and Nautica, which is underwater. All of these different places that are very, very unique from each other. That's what this map, it's not too big, it's not too small either. It's the perfect size, and you can zoom wherever you want once you discover it.
Right.
So there's things in the background, like if you put the time in to search that corner, you're probably gonna find a treasure chest. And it's not just a treasure chest, usually it's something very, very important. You find a lot of key items. You find, because throughout the game, just like Zelda, it has a lot of inspiration from Zelda. You have to find 4 orbs. 2 of the orbs are like in just random locations on the map.
Right, you'll see like throughout the entire game, like if you're just running around through the map, you'll see these mysterious red doors. And I love how it's specifically designed for you to see that there's a treasure chest in there, but you know you can't get there, so you know like, you look at it like, I'm gonna come back to you. I know that you're here.
It's the classic Zelda thing to do. In Zelda, you walk into a place, you'll find a treasure chest, and it's just there waiting for you to open it. But you have to find out how. Once you get the key, you can go fucking crazy. You can fly around the entire map and open all these red doors. And you go to the Warrior's Rest Inn, you open up that door, you find one of the red orbs. You find one of, not red orbs, but you find one of the orbs. One of the orbs you've been trying to find for the story. And it's an important key item, and it's just here. And you find another red orb, not red, I keep saying red orb. You find another orb in the bird's nest, just out in the middle of nowhere, and it's just there, you just get it.
I think that this game is made for people who are extremely curious. When you have a lot of curiosity, you're able to find these things, and it doesn't have to explicitly tell you, well, not just the orbs, but just like anything that's like interesting or useful and things like that. Like if you take the time out to do side quests, you'll probably be able to craft like really nice armor, even though you don't need to do that. Yeah. But it is still like a cool thing to get a really special equipment.
If you are a curious person, this game's going to be much easier for you in general. If you are looking through the character trees and curious to see how things work, you're going to find abilities that are going to help so much. If you put the time in to find these chests and to find things on the ground, the sparkly spots, every time you pick up a sparkly spot, it lets you know that that's what you found there.
It'll tell you where you found it, and it'll tell you like if it's a thing that only appears at night, you'll be able to know that.
If you need it later, it'll be there for you, and you'll always know where it is.
Same with information on monsters too. They give you a lot of information that I feel like will go overlooked. If you need certain things from a certain monster, if you've already interacted with it, you can find that too.
Yeah.
And if you look through the red books, like if you were to keep running around and you go through the red books, I know that usually if we see that it's not a recipe, we'll just kind of like skip through it. But I took the time out to look through some of those, and it kind of tells you where the story is gonna go. In a way, it kind of gives hints to the secrets of that town and the people who've lived there and stuff. So I thought that was cool.
And that's a very therapeutic part of the game. I found it very therapeutic to walk around every town and like open up all the dressers and read through all the books to make sure I don't miss anything. And you find genuinely good stuff from doing that. You'll find a really good armor piece inside of the dresser, and it's just there for you to grab. And it makes you want to keep doing it. It makes you want to keep doing it for every single city that you run into. For some reason in this game, I feel like the things that you find are a lot more helpful than those other RPG games. So yeah, this map, perfect size, I mentioned before, has things hidden all over the place for you to explore. It also has great, I don't know how to say it, but it's like direction. You can always see where you are.
Right, relative, like if you were to look at the volcano and you're somewhere that's not in Hoto, you kind of like, you'll see it relative to where you are, literally. And that's really, really cool.
You can see it, and you can always see the world tree out in the distance, which is your goal.
And everything is connected too. Like if I were to take my horse and like ride from Gallopolis to, what is it? I think Gondolia, I can.
Yeah, and you start off the game like that, and then at the end of the game you have the whale, you get the whale, and you can see all the places that you've been to, you can fly over them and where they are in relation to each other, and it's just really interesting to see and look down and be like, wow, I remember being over there. I want to start talking about some bad things. Some bad things. So
I have some nitpicky things, but I don't know if it's like bad, well, one bad thing, but.
Yeah, I want to say that there are skills on the skill trees that are way more overpowered than other skills, and it's like you're guaranteed to have a much easier job throughout the game if you get these skills early. A good example is Hustle Dance. Sylvando's Hustle Dance, if you get that early, it's going to be much easier to go through.
Which is true. I've had that experience with the octopus. Before I had Hustle Dance, and I think Kabuff, I had a really hard time with the octopus. And then I just like, I leveled up, I think maybe 2 times, maybe 3 levels. And after that, I had Hustle Dance, I had Kabuff, and I was just like set. Yeah. I was pretty like
the earlier
set
bosses without Hustle Dance is a challenge. And if you have the sword and shield in comparison to the great sword, it's also a challenge. The great sword does so much more damage than the normal sword, and it's like, why would you even have that? And there's a lot of that going around. Some characters are way more useless than other characters, but some of those characters are also more useful in certain acts. Depending on what act you're in, some characters are more useful than others. And
who do you think is useful in Act 1?
Well, Eric.
Oh,
in Act
you're
1,
right.
Yeah, Eric in Act 1 is ridiculous. Sleeper hit with the Victimizer combo or Persecutor combo.
Right, or you could use that, what is it, the Venom one?
Yeah, the Venom one and the Sleep one. They're both very overpowered early in the game, and they specifically make it where when you're leveling up right at the beginning of the game, you can actually see, like, this one makes them go to sleep. This one does 6-time damage to sleeping opponents.
You'll know,
they're right next to each other.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of a line for you to pick the one that you need before the one that does the 6
And that right
damage.
there, it does that right at the beginning of the game, and it's letting the player know, hey, if you put time in to study through these character trees and like look, you'll be able to do some crazy ass combinations if you put the time in to look through them.
And it's interesting that like Eric, he's like really important in Act 1, and then like Act 2 kind of like, yeah. I don't really need him that much.
That's the thing, though. He is useful in Act 2 if we're using the boomerang. But see, neither of us gave boomerang a chance. We didn't give it a chance.
Right. Okay.
We say that Jade is the most useless throughout all 3 acts, but we never gave Claws a chance. Maybe her claw stuff is very, very good.
Probably. I used the spear because I don't know, I thought that was her thing.
We just used the spear the entire game. So
That is true. So, like, I guess I wouldn't really... Yeah, so I guess we can't really say if those characters are useless or not because we didn't try everything
if
out.
we were curious enough to try it out, there's a chance Act 2 would have been much easier throughout. And that's we go back to the curiosity. If you're curious about trying things out, you're probably gonna have a much easier time.
Right, and
You're gonna
it's
find
funny
great
because
things.
we could have done that at any given moment. We didn't have to really work really hard to get those points because you can just easily take off your points from spears and then add it to claws and just
to try it out, to at least give it a try. Wow, we were supposed to be talking about bad shit, but then it became something good, right? This next thing that we're gonna say was supposed to be a bad thing, but we're probably gonna end up saying something good about it too, because the next thing was the elements.
Oh, I had a really strange time with that. I felt like the elements didn't really, the magic. I felt like it didn't really hit any weak points for certain monsters that looked like, you know, you would think that if you use an ice ability on a fire-looking monster, that would hurt them more than using a different ability.
Something like that.
Right.
There's also certain moves that feel like they just never work.
Which
like
moves?
Bezel Home?
Bezel Freeze.
Bezel Freeze or something like that. It was it does heavy damage to undead undead monsters or demon monsters.
Demons, yeah.
Yeah, it's supposed to do a heavy damage, but I feel like it never did.
It never does.
I
It
don't
usually
really
does
know.
like 34.
Yeah, I never really know what's a demon monster or what's not a demon monster, you know? And yeah, things like Frizzle, you would think that it would work better on certain elements, but I don't think that's the case. I want to say everything is just like flat. There is no elemental thing. Like we're used to things like Final Fantasy X where elements is like very important.
Right.
But yeah, in this game, I want to say it's not as important. I want to say it's there, maybe you get a little bonus, but it's not like a huge bonus like it is in like Final Fantasy or something.
Yeah, I've always thought that was weird and just like, what's the point? But I guess like if you're gonna have dark mages in your group, then what's a dark mage without elemental abilities?
Yeah,
So,
but even things like, we were mentioning magic, even things like snooze never works. There's a lot of things that just doesn't work. Never try it on bosses because it's never gonna work.
Exactly.
There's a lot of that. And it's really disappointing because it would be very, very awesome to use all of these things to their fullest on bosses. Because if you could do that, you would be able to do so much. And
It's just certain debuffs that don't really work on bosses because like other things are kind of bound to work most of the time, like Sap, Kasap.
Sap and Oomph is the go-to stuff that usually works. Yeah, Sap and Oomph is the best. But we say this, but at the same time, the game is easy enough for you to experiment. You can try many things. Even if something doesn't work, you can usually always try plan B. There's always a plan B, there's always plan C. It's not like Persona where like if you fuck up once, that's it. Like you have no chance to really try anything out. You have to do what you know specifically works, because if you try something else, he's gonna fuck you up and it's gonna kill the main character.
Right, but then again, like in Persona, there's the elemental thing that you can do, so.
Yeah, it's the elemental thing, but there are times where you don't know what the elemental is.
True, you have to spend a lot of turns trying to find that out.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't have that many turns to find out what that elemental
That's
is.
true.
But in this game, you have plenty of turns to mess up. You can accidentally mess up really bad and still come out okay. There's been so many times, and that's why I love the difficulty of this game. Because I talk about it being too easy, but I also talk about it being hard. There are bosses where the tides turn very hard. You'll be getting your ass kicked by this boss for a long time, and then all of a sudden, a thing happens, and the tables turn.
Yeah, there are plenty of times where you've seen me, I was like close to dying, like close to checking out because
if you
I got
keep
frustrated.
fighting, guaranteed, if you keep fighting, even though it looks awful and looks like you're about to lose, if you keep fighting and keep trying, there's a high chance that you can come back. You can come back. They can overwhelm you very quickly, all the bosses, and yeah, this game is full of bosses because that's really where the difficulty is. The bosses are the game. Everything else is just additions for experience. but the bosses are the difficulty. That's where
They're what makes the game.
yeah, they're women. That's why there's so many of them. It feels almost like when you're playing this game, it feels like there's a boss in every corner. There's a boss in every place that you go. But that's why.
And not all of them, like, it's like you said, like some are hard, some are not so hard. And I think that like they can get away with that due to the fact that all the bosses aren't like ridiculously hard, like in other RPG games that have very few bosses. And that's because those bosses are super difficult.
Very difficult, yeah.
I didn't even pay attention to that, honestly. Like I didn't even notice that there were that many
There's a lot of bosses in this game, yeah. And majority of them have interesting things that they do. I remember having a very hard time with Boogie, the first time I fought Boogie, because he would make everyone start dancing, and you have the
It's just a nightmare.
Yeah, you have Aurora Serpent, who is like making everyone paralyzed and doing the AoE damage. There's a snow monster, and you have to hit it with Zap. You have to kill it with Zap.
That was a necessary monster?
It was a bonus monster.
Okay.
You didn't have to do that, but you should do it because you want to rebuild Cobblestone in Act 3. But well, let's get to the acts now. So in Act 1, it's the first initial adventure. We're getting into spoilers. Gathering your teammates for the first time, and you explore this world, and you're finding all these different cities. You get to the tree, and you lose.
Yield your power to me!
You lose at the end of Act 1.
Not only do you lose, but you also like lose a teammate.
You lose
everything,
You lose
honestly.
everything. Yeah, you lose a teammate, but you lose everyone. And the game strips everything away from you. It strips your powers, it strips all of your friends. Basically, it sends you to the future where everything got messed up and you lost. You failed your mission. And I love that. Because throughout the second act is you trying to get your team back together and regaining your power. Because you mentioned on the first act, you have the very long, like, this character joined your party, this character joined your party, you know?
Right.
And it does that for every single character. When it happens on Act 2,
It matters so much more.
yeah, you feel a lot closer than you did on the first
You felt
one.
more relieved to have them back because like going through the game, going through Act 2 without them, you feel very lost without your friends.
Yes, the developers rip away your friends and they rip away your teammates to show you these teammates aren't just your friends, they're your family. You've basically been through bad times, good times, desperation, and sorrow together. You know, if you fall, they're gonna pick you back up. Unlike Persona.
You'll always talk about Persona.
Fucking Persona. You see, your friends on Dragon Quest XI, they're not gonna fucking leave if you fall down. They're gonna pick you up.
No, he shall not go alone. I swore an oath.
We all are. We're in this together.
Aye, if you think I'm missing my chance to get revenge for my Eleanor after all these years, you've another think coming.
Don't worry, darling. I'm with you all the way.
Yes, I promised Veronica I would finish this.
You heard. We're in this together. I'm supposed to help the Luminary, and that means to the bitter end.
It's just, you know, if you're gonna develop the game about friendship, make the gameplay about friendship.
I can't even
damn it.
like argue against that because like with this game, like, you know, when I played Persona 4 and then like Persona 5, I played it with the intentions of like that friendship feeling, you know, like knowing that my friends are there for me. And I think that Dragon Quest XI, it really shines much heavier the power of friendship.
Not just with the game design, not just with the character trees and how they work together, but with the story itself.
Yeah, with the story.
You rip them away, and and it shows you how great it is to have them with you, and then you get them all one by one again. And you almost feel bad for them because they've been living in this world that's been destroyed.
And it's all your fault.
And it's your fault. It's all a failure. You find Eric, and he's like become a stowaway on your ship, and he doesn't remember who you are. And things like that. It's kind of depressing. Yeah, Act 2 is you gathering up your party again and fighting Mordegon. And I want to say that's really, when you fight Mordegon at the end of Act 2, that's the end of the game. That's really the end of the game.
The end? Question mark?
The end question mark, yeah, because it keeps going. Also, whenever you beat Mordegon at the end of Act 2, and then the credits roll, it sends you back to the main menu screen, and it doesn't tell you.
What the hell?
Yeah, it doesn't tell the player that there's more. So
Right.
it's almost a curiosity thing again. If you just happen to hit continue,
happen to look.
yeah, if you just so happen to hit continue on the game that you beat, you're gonna find out that there's an entire other third act.
That's very interesting.
If you're curious enough, technically, you know, if you weren't looking at any guides and anything like that, if you're just curious enough to hit the file, you'd find out that there's a third act, which is interesting. And that's the entire game. It's just curiosity will get you everywhere in this game.
Yeah.
That's what I love. I love that. And yeah, once you beat Mordegon in Act 2, you have this entire third act, which is essentially the end game. I guess pun intended, because it's almost the same story as Avengers Endgame.
In a way, but they do time travel a lot better.
On Act 3, you go back in time, and
well, before you even go back in time, it's like a whole thing. Like you discuss it over with your friends, and your friends don't want you to leave, and I'm like, my emotions.
After you beat Act 2, the game doesn't just end with credits, you know? In so many RPG games, you spend hours and hours playing the game, and then it usually just fucking ends. Final Fantasy VII being a good example. But in this game, you're able to walk around the world and experience the aftermath after its credits. Of course, it's not over, but it's still a nice thing to be able to witness.
I stand ready to pledge myself to your cause once more.
Yes, very dramatic, Hendrik, honey. Farewell, darling.
You've grown into a fine figure of a man, laddie.
I suppose I began this journey with you, feeling that I was simply doing my duty. But it became so much more than that. So please, if you don't mind, I hope you'll take me along with you, all over again.
You've had this huge adventure with all these guys, and yeah, now you're about to leave. You're about to go back in time. You're gonna lose these experiences with these characters, but you gotta do it. You gotta do it. You gotta hit that end game, because that end game is good. It's good end game, so you have to. And so once you do it, it sends you back in time. You actually lose your levels. You go back to level like 30, which was like, oh my God, I just went to 50, now I lost my levels. But if you keep playing, you're gonna get your levels back. It's impressive to have a player go up to a certain act, hit level 50. It's ballsy too, hit level 50, and then have them go back in time, have them lose their levels, and redo basically almost all the experiences that you had on Act 2, but do it in Act 3 and differently. And it's a good excuse to have the players go through certain bosses again, but have them harder. So that's what makes Act 3 it feels like a DLC almost. And I respect them for that, because you have all these games that could easily have released that. They would have released that as DLC.
Right.
Act 3 would have been DLC in so many different games. It's perfect for, I want to say maybe it even was DLC in the Japanese version of the game, because that would make sense. Maybe the American version had the DLC added on. So we had Act 3 with the game, and maybe they didn't. I don't know, I'd have to look that up. I don't want to make accusations.
I hope not.
But yeah, Act 3 almost feels like it was going to be DLC, but they decided, fuck it, let's put it in with the game, and it helps the game so much. And it's a great example of how games should be when it comes to the content. But yeah, Act 3 is essentially just like testing your skills, because I think it's very interesting the way they set that up. They instead of just trying to beat the bosses now you're trying to beat them under a certain amount of turns. So it's not just about surviving, it's about doing it in a smart way. The Trials of Angela, you have to like do certain things under 30 moves.
Right, and I think that it's all on purpose too. Like what it's teaching you is that you need to defeat your enemies as quickly as possible. No more fucking around, no more like, let me try and use Kabuff over and over again and do all this, like,
it requires you to think. You really have to think on Act 3.
You really do, and I really think that they're definitely emphasizing on just attack. Not just attack, but you know, like, make sure you're focusing on like just attacking the main monster, the main boss. Yeah. And that comes into play later.
Because you fight Mordegon again, and you beat Mordegon in Act 3, and then you fight Colosmos, who's the main final boss, and he looks like a weird version of Cell and the Peanut Head from Dragon Ball Super. He looks really weird.
He does. He has a peanut head. He kind of looks like Kim Jong-un a little bit too.
Act 1 is fairly easy. Act 2 is a bit more difficult. Act 3 is hard as fuck. So you kind of have to grind hard on Act 3, which is kind of shitty. That part sucks. Trying to fight Colosmos and like Malicious Jasper while like on level 70 or something is not
You'll
easy.
get your ass handed to you.
Yeah, I would suggest grinding up to 99.
I wouldn't say it's 1,000 times easier, but it's a lot easier when you're at 99.
A lot easier at 99, yeah.
Yeah.
And by doing so, the best way to do that is Metal Slime grind, because throughout the game you'll find Metal Slimes. If you manage to hit a critical or hit them enough before they run away, you get extra experience, a huge boost of experience.
Right.
And there's a thing with Peps.
You can increase your experience with Hallelujah, and then with Electrolyte, you can possibly turn the monsters that you're fighting into metal slimes. They could turn into robots, but they mostly turn into metal slimes.
Yeah. And if you manage to kill them all, you get like 10 levels. Yeah, that you're probably gonna have to do that on Act 3 if you want to beat the final boss. But if you do, he's kind of easy. He's not too bad. You had a much easier time than I did.
Yeah, because I didn't even get the ads that you were talking about.
Yeah, you didn't even get the. Well, that's because I told you specifically. I was like, you probably want to go for that claw.
Oh, the ads, the claw summons
I don't
the
know,
ads
but
or
the claw
something.
fucking does damage. The claw does a lot of damage, and I figured that out the hard way. So
Yeah.
I told you
Gave me
beforehand.
the secret.
Yeah.
Yeah, it destroyed him. I was surprised too, because like when you get to the final boss, you just have so much anxiety and you think this is it.
But once you beat him, you have a really, really good feeling. You feel like you really accomplished something.
And it's interesting because I didn't know that this game was supposed to be a prequel to the Dragon Quest series.
Yeah.
And they kind of touch on that like towards the end when you talk to the Id Dragon. And you learn that the dragon turned into Yggdrasil, the tree, and all of that. That was really
And
nice
it mentions
to know.
Erdrick, which all the Americans watched that and were like, what the fuck, what is going on here?
Had
But it
no
was,
idea.
yeah, it's a reference to Dragon Quest 3 and really just the first 3 Dragon Quest games. You see the character from Dragon Quest, from the original Dragon Quest games. And yeah, it's a nice Easter egg to reveal that it's a prequel to everything. And it's kind of them starting over because Dragon Quest 11 is basically like, it's supposed to be like Dragon Quest 1 now.
Right.
And so now they're rebooting, and I think the next Dragon Quest games are all gonna come out in America.
I'm looking forward to it because I haven't really like started with a series, so the fact that they're starting over.
Japan is probably sick of Dragon Quest.
Probably.
They probably hate Dragon Quest now. Cause I'd probably be sick of it. Cause I know that I was looking at gameplay and I was like, you can tell it's kind of the same game. They didn't really change too much, which I hate. You know,
Yeah.
I hate that about Persona. But because it's new to us, you know, it's like, yeah, it's nice. It's a nice game. It's nice. It's nicely built. It's charming as hell. It's one of the most charming games I've ever played in my life. It's beautiful.
I like how the characters are designed, like you've already said. They all look very unique. Like, you know, this is that person.
even like the small people you're talking to, they all look interesting. Some of them they share faces, but the faces are so charming and well drawn that like, you can't help but love it.
It's very colorful. I feel like when you first play the game, it's just bright and colorful as fuck. And it's funny because when things go to shit, it's the complete opposite. And then when things are good again, it's bright and colorful and it feels refreshing. Yeah, and everyone's wearing like vibrant colors and stuff.
Yeah, it
nice.
feels like a Nintendo game. It's got the Nintendo gummy look to it, and it's very, very nice to look at. I was interested that it didn't come out on Switch until recently. It came out recently, which if you are gonna play it, I would suggest it
On
on
the
Switch
Switch,
because
yeah.
you get the orchestrated version of the soundtrack,
I'm so jealous.
which would probably help a lot.
Yeah.
And it just
And you can also
looks
do
and
it in
feels like
8-bit, so that's cute. Jealous.
Yeah, it looks and feels like a Nintendo game, which is why I'd suggest it on Switch also. Yeah, Dragon Quest is fantastic. There's so much more to talk about that we didn't even mention. Like the peps, all the pep-ups look really, really nice. The animations for them, they're all really interesting, really funny. Sylvando is a great character.
Sylvando is my favorite character. I love him.
Big dragon, begat Yggdrasil.
To even hope to best such a foe may seem...
Can we really do this?
Oh, honey, you better believe we can.
Great. since he's kind of, we don't know if he's gay, we don't know if he's.
I think that Sylvando is like bisexual.
Yeah, I mean.
Because like it's funny that you brought to my attention that he's the only guy who can use whips and wear certain armor that only the women can wear. Yeah. He's great because like once he gets that chivalry, when he gets that chivalry ability, ladies first.
Ladies first.
Whew.
Ladies first. You give any girl. That's like Sylvando. Sylvando, he can use a whip, but he can also use a sword. He's the only person that can use a male and a female thing. And yeah, he gets a move called Ladies First, where he lets any girl go take his turn, and like you can give Veronica or Serena a turn.
And they have echoes, so they have like they do like 4 things.
So overpowered and so great for Colosmos. I hate that you get it so late, but it's that overpowered. So yeah,
he's definitely like a flexible, supportive character, and it's funny how his personality is reflected into like his usefulness in the game. He's that person. You don't really fight with Sylvando. You just kind of like you use him to help the other characters become better.
Theming, and I talk about that all the time. I talked about it in my first tidbit video. Theming, theme the character skills and all their abilities with the character's personality, and it works. It works very, very well, and they do a very good job in this game. But there's so much to talk about that we're not going to be able to jam it all into this video.
But you know what? Hey, all the better, because like that means everyone else will be able to figure out that stuff on their own when they play it.
Try the game out. I want this game to get supported. I want people to support Dragon Quest. I say that turn-based is a dying breed. I hope it doesn't die off.
I hope not either. It's becoming a niche thing, and I don't know, I like the idea of just like turn-based RPG games and being able to take my time and explore things and stuff.
Yeah, if you can look past the awful music and switch the camera to battle mode or to classic mode or whatever, don't have it what it is now, then you will have a good time. Hopefully you have a good time. Hopefully, I hope that you like it. I always hope that everybody likes it. It's a perfect game to play over Christmas.